Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for tuning in again and watching another video of mine. I'll try to keep this one short, but I know I always say that and I never do. I really try to crank out a lot of these YouTube videos as much as I can. I'm really seeing that you guys are enjoying the content with all your comments below and gaining new subscribers every day, which is a great thing, and I'm very thankful for that. So I just wanted to kick out another video. This one's just going to be more of a first impressions video, and I'll get into a close-up of the gear that I'm going to be talking about today. But it's going to be the first impression of the Leica M10. Let me get that to focus for you guys. So the Leica M10, for those of you that know, has been out for quite some time. It is a classic rangefinder camera in every sense of the word, except for it is digital. But I'll get into my first impressions, which are fantastic on this camera in a second. I'm sorry if I look off a screen here. I just have some notes here because I just want to make sure that I don't ramble on. What is my history with Leica? I used to shoot an M6. I shot a film camera M6, a nice silver version. And, I had that camera for many years and I loved it, and it was a phenomenal camera. And I had a repair issue where I had to send it into Leica, New Jersey for the frame count. Not a huge deal, but it was annoying. And I figured, it's such a beautiful camera, I want to get it fixed. Long story short, the repair started to rack up to a crazy amount of money, and it was taking longer and longer, and I could not get a definite date on when they were going to send it back to me. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to dump the camera, and I ended up selling it. With that, I went into an M9P, and the M9P really introduced my love for the digital Leicas. That camera was amazing with that had an older sensor. It was repaired. The sensors in the Leica M9 had a lot of issues where they were going bad. I think they were creating some kind of I think it was almost like a moisture or a fungus inside of them. So they were being replaced. But that sensor was an amazing sensor. It was an older CCD sensor, and the colors were gorgeous out of it. And I had that for probably about a year, and I loved it. But that camera is not anywhere close to this camera in terms of how gorgeous this thing is actually made. And again, I'll get into that in a second. So why did I get this camera? And I had the opportunity to get it. I shot, like I said, I shoot with a lot of different cameras, and I don't consider myself a camera snob. I do love nice gear, and I do love to buy the right tools for the job, but I'll shoot anything. I shoot everything from, Fuji X70s, Ricoh GR3, all the way up to the GFX, and now, a Leica M10, and, I still own a lot of these cameras, but I like to experiment with different cameras, and I like to use different cameras for different jobs. So what was I doing? I was slowly getting rid of all my Nikon gear. I had a Nikon D750, I had a Nikon A10. I sold those. I still remained, with my Nikon D5. But I found for the majority of the shoots that I've been doing lately, as far as wedding work and family portraits, the D5 was, I want to say it was overkill for me. I did not need that fast shutter speeds. I didn't need a camera that size and weight. I didn't need that large of a battery capacity. I found myself going to a wedding and not even draining that battery down, a halfway, just for one battery, and I had 3 of them. So I was carrying around a lot of extras that I didn't need. I also found that the dynamic range suffered a little bit. It wasn't on par with everything else out there. And when I'm trying to create, backlit photos and whatnot, trying to pull from the shadows was extremely difficult. That has nothing to do with why I have this camera, but I just figured I'd tell you because that camera was used as a trade to get a Leica M10. Now I know people are probably saying like, what? I don't even understand your thinking. You went from a D5, which is a state-of-the-art flagship speed demon sports style camera, which it has all the bells and whistles, down to a autofocus, brass, old school rangefinder style camera with a digital sensor in the back. I know, but I shoot, again, right now, I shoot the entire Fujifilm system, and I shoot a Canon EOS R, and that does the majority of my work for the kind of photography that I do. When I go out on my own and I shoot for my own personal projects, what I love to shoot is street photography. And for that reason, I have the X100F, I have an X Pro 1, 2, and a 3 on the way. And I have this crown jewel right here, the M10. I'm going to switch to camera view, and I'm going to get in close, and we're going to start discussing this camera a little bit. And then I'm going to go out and shoot and definitely give you my thoughts afterwards. But I can tell you right off the bat that the simple little files that I've pulled from this so far, along with the glass, I own a Voigtlander 35 1.4, the classic, what is this, the Nocturne Classic. And I also have a Summicron 50 f2, an older, I think it's a version 3. It's phenomenal. You know, again, I'm not gonna say it's better or worse than anything else. It's just different. Everything's just different. But let me get into this camera. So let's just dive straight into this. All right, so here you go, guys. I have a little Lumi cube here that I'm going to be moving around so I can kind of show you some of the camera in better detail. But here we have the Leica M10, and the Leica M10, it really was their current version, the base version. Now I know you have the Leica M10D, I believe it is, and the M10P I think we have, which is an introduction of this camera with a touchscreen on the back. This does not have a touchscreen, but you know, again, you know, I go back and forth where, yeah, I do buy into Leica cameras being of a purist design, and when you start introducing touchscreens and all, while they might be a gorgeous feature to have and really beneficial, to me, I'm using this camera for one reason, and that's photography, and that is to slow down and practice the art form. And a camera like this just elicits that response from you. There's no way to go fast with this camera. You have 5 frames per second should you choose to put it on continuous, and that's the fastest it's going to go. There is no autofocus. There is only manual focus. It's a rangefinder patch. It does have focus peaking when you do employ live view on the back. It does have focus peaking. So if you adjust your focus, it will peak for you. I don't think you're going to be able to get to see that, but it does have focus peaking. Turn your live view back off and you have a blank screen. But right off the bat, like I told you, I owned an M10. The M10 was, I owned an M9P. The M9P was fantastic. It was a gorgeous camera, well built. But there is just something to the craftsmanship that they have really put into the M10. Every angle is sharp and milled, and the black paint has sort of a matte finish, which you can see has a natural patina to it already. And I know that my camera is a little bit older. It is a used M10. It isn't brand new, but I can just see the wear starting to come, especially towards the rear dial, which coincidentally I use for exposure compensation. But I can see the wear that's starting to show up on this, and I can tell that it's just going to patina beautifully. That, along with the on and off switch up top. With the M10, they introduced an ISO dial up top, which can be pulled out. And I know that this is old news, guys. There's a million, well, I wouldn't even say a million because I was looking for them and they are kind of hard to find, but there's a lot of M10 videos on YouTube which go over this camera in detail. And that's not what my intention was today with this video. It was more so just showing you my M10, why I bought it, and just a close-up of the gorgeous craftsmanship. Now, like I said to you, I don't say this to come off as a snob, but I've owned a lot of cameras. I've owned every kind of film camera out there, old school craftsmanship, all the way up until, you know, the newest Fujifilm cameras and Canon cameras, Nikon, obviously the Leica and, you know, Phase 1. They're all gorgeous and they're made really well, but none of them are even close to the craftsmanship that comes along with a Leica. It's just gorgeously finished. It's a classic design. All the dials are perfectly smooth and move so fluid. The menu style, although very simple, and I think we tend to forgive Leica because that's their motto. I mean, it's a simple camera. It's not supposed to be anything more than a photographic device. There's no video in this camera. You can't shoot video with it. 24 megapixels. The ISO results are fantastic. Shooting at 1600, 3200, 6400. A little bit of grain at 6400. 32 is nice. 1600 is very clean. The menu system, like I was going to say before, completely simple. You know, when you first turn on the camera, you get a My Menu, which you can add all your favorites that you're going to use on a daily basis. And then every time you hit the menu, it'll just go to another page. And within these little selections here, there's a few selections on some of the different you know, subjects here, but it's not anything crazy. I mean, you have 4 or 5 pages of menus here, and that's it. And you can't really dive too deep because, to be honest with you, there's really not much that you need to go into. You know, you can set, you know, RAW, JPEG. You can set your file size. You can set color, black and white. You have some contrast, sharpness, saturation parameters that you can set. You can set your drive mode, exposure comp. You can set auto ISO for a ceiling and a height, but one thing that I've noticed that Leica does differently compared to other camera systems with their auto ISO parameters, which is fantastic, is instead of picking a lowest minimal shutter speed, they give you the option to pick a shutter speed relative to your focal distance. So if you set up the parameters for a 35 millimeter lens, it'll always shoot double the focal length, which is the rule. So now when you throw on a 50 compared to a 35, you throw on a 35, it's going to give you around a 70 or an 80 shutter speed. You throw on a 50, it's going to give you a 100 without you having to change everything. So like, again, when you shoot a Fujifilm or any other camera, it says, okay, what do you want your minimal focal speed, you know, shutter speed to be? And that's all well and good, but if you change your focal plane, your focal distance, or, you know, you put it on a different lens, now that shutter speed might not coincide with what your desired shutter speed is going to be. So, you know, this is a really cool idea, and I hope more cameras do that. But like I said, on my favorite menu, I have lens detection, which is automatic, but if I need to set it, it's on there. I have drive mode. I have exposure metering, and which I've been told that center weighted is the best way to go on this camera. I have my exposure comp. I'm trying to think what else I have on here. Oh, I'm sorry. Lens detection, drive mode, ISO setup. There's a little dial on the style. There's a little M that says M dial, MISO. And MISO is what your manual ISO is going to be if you flick to that. So I have mine set for 10,000. That's a ridiculous number I probably won't use, but if I ever need to really just gather some kind of picture in low light, obviously if I just flick it to M, it's going to immediately go to 10,000, and that's what your ISO is going to be. And you can set that for any ISO that you want, all the way down to, you know, ISO 100. I have my white balance I have my JPEG settings, and the only reason why I have that is because you can change monochrome, the color. But that's kind of I don't know that I'm going to keep that there. I may just change that to profiles, because you can do it in your profiles too. You can set up, I think, 4 or 5 different profiles and format SD card, and that's really about it. So again, I don't need much else with this. It's really turn it on and shoot it. You know, all your aperture is going to be on the lens. Your focus is going to be on the lens. And beyond that, you have your frame line selector here, which is automatic once you attach your lens. And this button over here is a focus check. You can use that to punch in when you're in live view and confirm your focusing area and that you're dialed in. Another kind of cool thing is if you hit this center button on the back, you'll get a, you know, kind of a information display heads up, which, you know, if you roll your exposure, you can see the exposure moving along with that. So, and it tells you kind of what mode you're in, continuous, or, you know, all that other stuff. But this camera does have some weight to it, and that's because obviously it's all brass. The top plate, bottom plate are all brass. Body's magnesium. You know, if you know anything about old film camera Leicas, it's the same thing with the digital, whereas you open up the little wheel on the back, take off the back plate cover, and you wear battery, and let me see if I can get that in the camera. Your battery and your SD card are in the back. You have your tripod mount, but that simply just clicks back on. All right, guys, we're going to take the beautiful M10 out. That was my first impression of this camera. Like I said, it is gorgeous. You do get some fingerprints all over all over the viewfinder and even on the back screen, because there's not much of a grip. It's not that it's uncomfortable, but it's basically just a black square. It's, you know, with a rounded edge. There's not much to it. This little part on the back here near your exposure comp, it's like a little thumb tab. That is good. You can get one of those thumbs up grips there for it. But, you know, I'll probably just use a simple Peak Design wrist strap for mine. I tend to like that with the rangefinders when I'm shooting. But other than that, we're going to take it out, get some images, and I'll probably add them throughout the video or towards the end. All right, guys, that was just the first impressions look of the M10. And like I said, it is a pricey camera. It is a luxury item, definitely boutique. However, is it worth what they're asking? I would say for the craftsmanship alone, without a doubt. But I can tell you that the files definitely match, you know, the craftsmanship as well. They're gorgeous, and the coloring is gorgeous. And black and whites, forget it. They're amazing. All right, guys, I'll show you some examples. Thank you again.